Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on the channel where we are finally back in the far north region of Queensland, Australia. And in today's video, we will be chasing a tourist passenger train known as the Savannahlander from Almaden to Kuranda. The Savannahlander is a passenger train that was established in the 1990s, which over the years has provided a unique passenger service to the 3-foot and 6-inch gauge Tablelands System between Cairns and Forsayth, where the Savannahlander traverses this entire route on its weekly journey, typically lasting from Wednesday to Saturday, with overnight stops in Almaden and Forsayth headed westbound, and an overnight stop at Mount Surprise when headed eastbound. The Savannahlander is the only train that currently operates on the Tablelands System past Kuranda, meaning this weekly service is single-handedly keeping almost 400 kilometres of regional rail line open, with the service being enjoyed for its unique scenery ranging from eastern coast rainforest to the western savanna wilds, with the service typically having its operating season lasting from March to November. However, this video captures the Savannahlander in a very unusual situation due to the effects of Cyclone Jasper in late 2023, as heavy rain and flooding severely damaged the Tablelands System, leading to unusual operating times. The mountainous Cairns to Kuranda section forced the closure of the Kuranda Scenic Railway for many months, until regular services resumed once again around March and April, with the Savannahlander only starting again in May, which is 2 months after its usual starting date. Even though things got going again in May, the train was forced to only head as far as Almaden due to railway damage and maintenance concerns further west, departing Cairns on a Friday and returning the next day. That is exactly the operation we'll be seeing today, where the Savannahlander begins its return trip to Cairns from Almaden 3 hours than it usually would on a Saturday, which leads to some unusual events such as a meet with the Kuranda Scenic Railway, which usually would never happen, as under normal circumstances the Savannahlander would be scheduled around the Kuranda services. So without further ado, let's begin. Welcome to the Cairns Railfan. We begin at Almaden with the Savannahlander departing from the station just down the line at 9 a.m, 3 hours earlier than its usual departure time on Saturdays at 12 p.m. The Savannalander's mode of power today is made up of 2 Queensland Rail 2000 class rail cars, referred to as rail motors in Australia. 42 of them were built from 1956 to 1971 around Brisbane, Queensland's capital city, and proved very useful to Queensland Rail for providing suburban passenger services in Brisbane alongside passenger trains connecting populated cities to very rural towns in Queensland. The Savannahlander passenger service is operated privately by Cairns Kuranda Steam Railway on behalf of the Queensland Government. CKSR is named as such for the brief steam service that it operated from Cairns to Kuranda in the early 2000s, and retains this name even though these services stopped well over a decade ago. CKSR also operates the Cairns Rail cement shunting services on the north coastline between Cairns and Waree for Pacific National. CKSR is currently leased 3 of the unique diesel-powered 2000 classes, numbered 2026, 2028, built in 1963, and 2053, built in 1971, where 2053 is sometimes used to form 3 coach-long trains, as 2053 is a member of the 4 unique units of the 2000 class built to operate as middle coaches. Next, we see the train passing through Lappa railway station, where despite its age and usefulness being long gone due to the remote area, it is still looked after and cared for. Lappa is most notable for previously being the junction to the branch line to Mount Garnet, which unfortunately closed in the early 1960s. There were little passengers on the train during this trip, mostly just locals and friends of the Savannahlander, as often the tourists would prefer to go on the whole trip to Forsayth and or return to Cairns. Also, a fun fact about the Savannahlander 2000 classes is that Queensland Rail has leased them to CKSR for the price of $1 each per year, so $3 per year for 3 heritage trains in working order sounds pretty good to me. As we wait for the train to pass by the tiny Petford railway station, we see a unique scene as Petford was a rest stop that day for the racers taking part in the annual Great Wheelbarrow Race, where people form up teams and race along the main regional roads with wheelbarrows over a 3-day period, running from Mareeba to Chillago for charity, a distance of 140 kilometres. The busy build-up of people at this level crossing with only signs to warn of trains prompted a Queensland Rail crew nearby to arrive at the scene to make sure everyone knew the train was coming so no one would be hurt.
Hey, oh, thank you.
Train on!
Are you running?
Train on!
We now wait at a level crossing further down the Burke Developmental Road to see the train pass through. The 2000 classes that the Savannahlander uses also got the nickname of the Silver Bullets due to their unique streamlined appearance. Thanks to their capabilities of self-propulsion as a diesel rail motor, they can actually run a single unit as well if need be. There are about 20 or so out of the 42 2000 classes constructed that are still around today, many with heritage-based groups, as even after service their practicality is still found useful, especially since Queensland Heritage Railways have to deal with older track that can't take heavier rail vehicles. Afterwards, the Savannahlander pulled in for a stop at Dimbulah railway station, where it is looked after by a group of enthusiastic volunteers, and the Savannahlander commonly make stops here to allow the passengers a chance to eat at the railway station, often with some food prepared by the station volunteers. Dimbulah was once the junction for the branch line to Mount Mulligan, which unfortunately closed in the late 1950s, and just before this location at an area called Biboohra, they would have passed by the old interchange with the long-forgotten and unique 2-foot gauge Stannery Hills tramways, which closed in the 1930s, sometime before World War II had kicked off. The Tablelands System clearly was once a thriving rail network, sadly now relegated to just a single passenger train beyond Kuranda. Shortly afterwards, the train left Dimbulah and we continue the chase east to Kuranda. Next, at the township of Mareeba, we see the Savannahlander stop here for an operation not seen often anywhere else on the Queensland Rail network. Since the Savannahlander is getting relatively close to Mareeba, where a Queensland Rail maintenance crew is based, and Kuranda, where the Kuranda Scenic Railway services often are, it's time for a switchover of safe working system. Heading east upon arriving at Mareeba, the Savannahlander crew must switch over from staff and ticket working to DTC working. Staff and ticket working is also known as the token form of railway signalling, where drivers must have or see a token allowing permission to proceed. If that token is not there, they cannot proceed, as it would mean the track ahead is being used by another train. Once the Savannahlander crew passes by Mareeba heading west, they must get their procedure token out of the cabinet for further travel to Forsayth, indicating that they are now occupying the rail area. On eastern return to Cairns, such as seen here, the Savannahlander must return their token to the cabinet to indicate that they are no longer occupying the area. Once the switchover is made, they are now under DTC safe working, which stands for Direct Traffic Control. DTC is sign and radio-based signalling used particularly in rural areas where placing and maintaining electronic signals would be a hassle and waste of money. How this works is that under DTC, crews must have permission to proceed to a certain block limit sign, where if they aren't given authorization to pass, they must stop and wait at the sign until otherwise notified by the traffic office for the far northern region based in Townsville, over 300 kilometers south of Cairns. Now we wait at a place once known as Bontaba to await the Savannahlander to cross the Walsh River Bridge. Many locations on the current Tablelands System, such as this area, once had small stations, usually known as rail motor stops, for when passenger trains used to regularly run around here, before most of them were discontinued and the Savannahlander came around. However, most of these stops are unfortunately now long gone, except for a few, such as Petford, which we saw earlier maintained in good condition. Next up, we wait for the train to pull through Mareeba. This location is notable for many reasons. Mareeba was once home to a thriving rail yard and had a large station, where it was also the junction to the southern Tablelands branches from Mareeba to Ravenshoe and Tolga to Milla. These branches closed in portions from the 1960s to the early 2010s, with the Atherton to Herberton Historic Railway and Ravenshoe Steam Railway having heritage operations on the abandoned branches, alongside a museum at Tolga. AHHR is alive and kicking with current steam train operations and plans moving ahead for track restoration all the way to Atherton, and the museum at Tolga is still looked after. However, the Ravenshoe Steam Railway unfortunately hasn't ran for many years now and doesn't look like it will run again anytime soon. Mareeba has since become a shadow of its former self, with the railway yard being almost all gone and the large railway station replaced with a much smaller one, and despite the small station being under official government ownership of Queensland Rail, it is in very poor condition compared to the other volunteer-run railway stations we have seen on the journey so far. We now await the train to cross the Granite Creek Bridge just outside of Mareeba. It's worth noting that between Mareeba and Machilba, the track conditions have since improved and are rated for heavier loads. This change occurs at Arrogga Junction, where you can actually audibly hear the track condition change as you go over it while riding the Savannahlander. Arrogga Junction has a small branch line connection to the Tablelands sugar mill. However, 3-foot and 6-inch gauge trains have not transported bulk sugar for that mill in well over a decade now, yet that branch line still remains opened. We now find ourselves at the impressive Biboohra railway bridge, which crosses over the Barron River. The township of Biboohra is yet another place where a junction to a now closed branch line was located, which was for the branch line north to Dimbulah, which closed in the 1960s. We now jump forward to Kuranda, where the strangest part of this video takes place, with the Savannahlander meeting up with the Kuranda Scenic Railway services, which, as mentioned at the start of the video, usually never happens under normal scheduling. For this to take place, the Savannahlander had to wait outside Kuranda Railway Station at the signals for the southbound 2 p.m. Kuranda Scenic Railway service to leave platform 2 at the station for its trip south to Cairns. After this, the Savannahlander will be stopped at Kuranda Railway Station for just over half an hour, as like most of the railway line we have seen so far, and in Queensland as a whole, is one track down the Kuranda Range to Cairns, forcing the Savannahlander to wait a while for the Kuranda Scenic Railway service to get ahead first. The leaders of this Kuranda Scenic Railway service are a Horizon 1720 class 1730, who bought this locomotive off of Queensland Rail and is now leasing it back to them for Kuranda use, followed by Queensland Rail 1720 class 1764 in the awesome Kuranda Scenic Railway livery that quite a few of the 1720 classes that work up here wear. Behind them are a consist of 11 coaches. The 1720 classes were built from 1966 to 1970 in Queensland for general freight and occasional passenger use, and also received the EMD GL18C designation. Nowadays, their freight days are over, with multiple issues showing due to their age. Their home is now the Kuranda Scenic Railway, where they continue to operate the tourist passenger services between Cairns and Kuranda, like they have done for the many previous years.
இங்கே பாரு நிப்பாட்டுங்கடா வந்துடுறாங்க.
And now with the Savannahlander having stopped at Kuranda railway station at 2 p.m, it will wait another half an hour for permission to proceed behind the previous Kuranda Scenic railway service. The Queensland Rail 2000 classes have truly stood the test of time. With many years ago, the 2000 class was indeed a main form of Queensland Rail motive power for passenger trains all over the state, including through Kuranda and into the Tablelands System and its many long-gone branch lines and stations. Even after they left regular passenger service in the late 1990s, when they last operated short-distance Brisbane shuttle services, the 2000 classes have technically never left the revenue-earning business as a whole, with the Savannahlander coming around in 1995, as mentioned previously, to eventually completely replace the loco-hauled last great train ride passenger service on the Tablelands System before the Brisbane services had stopped. Now, 5 of the 2000 classes are in the revenue-earning business, with 3 of these being with the Savannahlander and the other 2 having recently been leased to Outback Aussie Tours, using them to run tourist passenger trains on the Central West System around Longreach. Now we get to see the Savannahlander leave Kuranda next to the 3:30 p.m. Kuranda to Cairns KSR service. Definitely not something many get to see often. And that's it for the video. Thank you very much for watching this one, and honestly I must apologise if this video was really information heavy, but the Tablelands System is a Queensland railway line I'm very passionate about, and I wanted to talk a whole lot about it. Same with the Savannahlander as a passenger service, which is very unique compared to others out there. Please do let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. The current situation with the Savannahlander taking place almost 3 months after those videos were taken is that I believe they actually aren't running all the way to Forsayth just yet. but are a lot closer with their runs currently headed out as far west as Ainsley, somewhat close by to Forsayth. But I reckon the Forsayth services will get up and running sometime soon, as the original prediction for line reopening to Forsayth was during July, and at the time of making this video, it is almost the end of that month. I would also like to give a special thanks to Savannahlander driver Joe, who helped me and my friend, the Australian train spotter, chase the train that day. And special thanks must also go to Savannahlander drivers Will and Sandra, who were on board the train itself that day, honking the horn many times for us and tolerating our train spotting craziness from 9 AM in the morning to 2 PM in the afternoon. I hope to see you next time, where the next video will be on passenger, freight and sugarcane trains around Gordon Vale, just south of Cairns. Goodbye.